Hello and welcome to today's episode of the World Class Real Estate Podcast. My name is Mark While I'm joined by Mr. Ian Macbeth. How are you, mate? Have you recovered from an intense week last week? 7 episodes in 7 days?
Yeah, lots of comments, lots of feedback, checking them back out myself. A couple of them I've listened to again myself. So shared them with quite a few people actually, because I think it's a nice way for estate agents at the start of the year to just kind of have that little bit of I think you mentioned it off camera, a bit of a shot in the arm to kind of get you onto that next level. So yeah, it's good. We had our big group kickoff meeting last week, which was brilliant. We had fitness expert in the room, we had a finance expert in the room, marketing panel, did some stuff on elite mental performance. Just a really good day. So I think that was dovetailed with 7 episodes going out on the show, a few other things as well. It just felt like a week of just knowledge bombs. So yeah, hopefully my brain is coping and the skull is growing as the brain is increasing over the last week. But what about you?
Well, I've been a bit under the weather actually. So today is the first day that I felt about right for 4 or 5 days. So just man flu, real tough, cold, and it's not like me at all. But that aside, feel better today. I wrote down in my journal this morning that it's about trying to get back on track and move the needle, get back on health goals and what have you. Yesterday, apparently Blue Monday. I don't buy into any of that crap. Personally, the most depressing day of the year. Not for me. I think that you've got to make little bits of improvement each and every day. Last week, the 7 days probably created a bit more work than I perhaps anticipated. Sat working late to publish podcasts on a Friday night wasn't my idea of fun, but it was a nice way to mix things up. And we've started the year okay at work. Not last week, probably not as busy as I thought it would be. From the week before, it kind of started really busy, slowed down a little bit. So I'm hoping that now we can start to build a little bit of consistency and start to get the habits in place that will make for a really good year. That's the kind of thing that I'm focusing on this week.
Yeah, I read the economy and I read the markets by how busy the gym is in January. And the gym was really quiet for the first 2 weeks, which makes me think with the schools and with people going back to work and that element of things, people hadn't got back into the normal world. And then all of a sudden, bang, Monday this week, it was popping. The gym was around, the car park was full, people were in the sauna, people were in the pool, people in the gym. So I feel like this week is the first actual week that the world's kind of come back to normal. So I'm sure everyone will see that in the markets. But I think we're in for a good quarter as estate agents. I'm seeing a lot of people really trying to make sure the pipeline turns by the stamp duty threshold. So I think we're in for quite a nice quarter, hopefully. All sorts of things going on. Trump this week as well. We were talking briefly off camera on that, weren't we?
Yeah, well, I think you just said, I think you used the word normal. I think we're in for, but I think Trump is going to shake things up. He's certainly started the first 24 hours. We'll probably talk about it a little bit more in the future, but the first 24 hours is certainly started with a bang. He is full of intention to put into place what he wants to put into place, right?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the Trump election might be, in our lifetime, the biggest impact that we see across the globe that anyone's had going into power in our lifetime, in our generation, if you like. I think we have to pay close attention to what's going on there for opportunity and for planning and for strategy, because I think the impact is inevitably going to ripple across the globe, and I don't think he's holding back this term. So we just have to keep close attention to how that impacts the property market and the pound and the dollar as well, because obviously that has an impact to us too. So yeah, we've got to keep close attention. But moving away from that, we've got a great guest on to talk about something that I think is really, really relevant in this day and age, really important to discuss. And the event last year that I went to was fantastic. So Clare Hughes is coming on who's at EXP. I think she's been at EXP for about 5 years. She's one of the kind of like senior figures there in the sort of layering system, if you like. I can't remember exact title. It might be expansion leader or something like that.
Yeah, something to do with expansion.
But yeah, she's been there for 5 years. She's built a really strong team and a great kind of self-employed career, herself. And she's not a volume agent like most of the good self-employed agents aren't volume agents. They kind of do it with quality and with precision and high fees. But she's also going to talk about the Women in the Estate Agency conference as well, which is 2 months away, less than 2 months, start of March. So that's something which is going to be quite interesting. So a couple of good questions around that, get an idea. So definitely hang around and listen, because if you want to know more, this is exactly what's going to be going on this year on that particular event.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we'll be learning about is those types of learning opportunities for us as males in the industry. So I'm really looking forward to speaking to Claire. We've not talked loads about the women in estate agents. I know we did briefly last year, but this is a real opportunity for me personally, and any male listening as well, to find out a little bit more about it and what's involved. Should we dive in and introduce her?
Let's do it.
Claire, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
We did say off camera it's a little bit early, isn't it, for the normal kind of chitter chatter of deep diving into agency, but I'm sure we'll be fine.
Early for me, not for you guys. I know you're early risers.
No, it's great. Thanks very much for getting up and coming on. We'll start today, as we start every podcast, with the headline questions. What does world-class real estate look like to you?
So to me, it's quite simply service, and it's customer service, because I think to a certain extent, I'm not going to name and shame anybody, but the bigger organizations perhaps lose focus a bit on customer service and just look at the numbers. So customer service, relationships with your customers, buyers and sellers, of course. I was fortunate enough to go to the EXP conference in Miami in November, and they had one of the speakers was a guy called, I think it's Will Guidera, I think you pronounce it, who has written a book called Unreasonable Hospitality. So he's from a hospitality background. So the restaurant was #1 in the world, and I think it's 11 Madison. I don't think he owns it any longer. And so his philosophy was unreasonable hospitality. Got the team together and said, right, what else can we do at every single touch point? So whether you're the person taking the code, the person taking the order, the kitchen porter in the kitchen washing the pots, what can we do to make that customer experience better? And honestly, he spoke so well. He spoke for about an hour, and we just went, wow. So it's just a case of sort of analysing your business, whether you're corporate or a self-employed agent like me, and working out how you can make that experience for the customer better, because it is all about the customer and customer service.
Yeah, experience being the word there that I think is really important, is that sort of connection to how you make someone feel. There's certain phrases, isn't there, of what you remember, but I think the experience part of that is really key. In fact, recruiting over the years, I've always found people from hospitality often make really good agents.
Do you know that Foxtons back in the day, they would, when they went out on boozy nights out, if there was a good waiter or waitress, they'd say, come in for an interview, because it works very well.
Yeah,
I have a hospitality background, hospitality recruitment agency. So, and you see that, I think, quite often.
Yeah, so you talked about the ability to serve and the ability to sort of take a step back and look in on the business, to review processes. It's something that Ian and I talk about quite a lot on the podcast. Now, when you're running your own business, whether that's a self-employed or a bigger business, sometimes it can be really hard to take that step back. We've come through sort of the time of year where it's really good to do that. Have you managed to do that? And do you speak to a lot of agents who are able to take a step back and maybe review their processes to see how they can try and improve and try and make that customer service better?
Yeah, and what I'm finding, because obviously, you guys, you've got a team that you can do that with in your own businesses. So we often collaborate with other people in our area that are also self-employed agents. And it's just having, an accountability buddy, really, sometimes, I think, to say, right, let's do this. Let's sit down and do this. Some will do it to a better extent than others. And I'm not a volume agent, so I guess I've probably got more hours in the day to do that type of thing. But then, some of them are just so busy, so they really need to sort of block out time to do it. And I know, and within our sort of internal chats, I know that some people are really, really doing that, and particularly the ones that saw Will or heard Will speak, because it was such a powerful presentation, and the takeaways from that were incredible.
Yeah, love that. Claire, I want to get on and talk about the itinerary and the agenda for the Women in Agency conference. I actually went to it last year. I thought it was really good. But before we do, could we just get a little bit of a background on not necessarily where you are today, but how your estate agency, how your property journey has kind of unfolded, which has led you to where you sit today?
So I started originally as relocation agent. So, and I can't, somebody asked me this recently, well, how did you get into that role? So I had 3 young children at the time. And I don't know, somebody must have just asked if I would be interested. They knew I had an interest in property. And there was, the relo agents at the time didn't have anybody in East London. But of course, there were people that needed to move. They wanted to move to Shoreditch. They wanted to move to Canary Wharf. So it was mostly lettings. So that's how I started. And then in 2008, that fell off a cliff. They stopped moving people around. So, I was working with people coming from, I don't know, New Delhi, Frankfurt, New York, and that just stopped. So I thought, well, I'll get a job in agency, and I did. So I went and worked for independents for a few years. Then went to Purple Bricks when they first launched, or pretty much after they first launched, and was with them until 2020. No, 2019. No, sorry, it was 2020, wasn't it? So I'm just thinking lockdown, and then I also aligned with the surgery that I had, because that was the same year. So 2020, I left Purple Bricks and launched with EXP.
How was the Purple Bricks kind of journey of being there in the early days and getting to almost the COVID sort of part?
Early days, amazing. It was, the culture in that company was incredible. I know people aren't necessarily fans of Michael and Kenny Bruce, but I thought they did a great job. They really built the culture in the company. I don't know, maybe it grew too quickly. They were pulled away to Australia and America. I think something was perhaps a bit lost then. But I still credit them with making agents realize that there is an alternative way of working. Because if you look, there are quite a few Purple Bricks agents in EXP now, because it was quite an easy transition. In retrospect, I think actually we weren't running our own businesses. We didn't really have autonomy, because it was mandated the fees you charge, the areas you worked in. If you had somebody, if you recruited a partner that they didn't like, well, they had to approve them. But if they didn't think they were performing, it was their decision whether they left or not. Not your own as a business owner, because we weren't business owners really. And we all had limited companies, obviously. But and it was, I knew in 2019 that I needed to do something different, but I just didn't know what that different was. Stay in agency, but I didn't know what that was going to be. And then I had this surgery, and then we went into lockdown, and it was kind of, it's one of those moments, and I'm not a sort of spiritual person, but this kind of stars aligned, really. It gave me time to just reflect and think, okay, what do I want to do? An ex-colleague from Purple Bricks had joined EXP, so I looked at that, and yeah, the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah, love that. No, it's very interesting to hear. Very interesting. Mark, are you going to the Women in Estate Agency conference, or are you still kind of trying to work out the diary? What do you reckon?
To be perfectly honest, this is going to sound quite bad, but I've not done very many conferences for a few years. So I don't take that much attention of them dates wise and what have you, because it's a bit of
March.
When is it?
7th of March.
7th of March. So you put me on the spot, Ian. No,
Well,
I don't think I'm
actually. I've actually teed that up, knowing the answer for Claire to now come in and
Cheers, mate.
and
Thanks
pick
very
the
much.
event.
So first of all, it's probably, and you said you went last year, so it's not like a lot of the conferences, is it? It is different. It's not an award ceremony. It's very much, and it's theatre style. We've got another new venue this year, which is it's amazing. We've got some surprises coming up. We've got an all-male panel that led by Ben Madden, which I think is going to be incredible. Some fantastic keynote speakers. And we've got all those supporters, the exhibitors as well. But to be honest, a lot of them, I think, would pay to support the conference, even if we didn't have space for them, because I don't know, people want to be a part of it. It really. If you look at the video from last year, some of the comments that people make about how it made them feel, when as a day, and generally speaking, the auditorium is pretty full. Whereas at other conferences, I don't see that all the time. I see, there's a lot more people at the bar, perhaps, than or talking to suppliers. I mean, the suppliers, we couldn't do it without them because it's expensive to put on a conference. I don't know if you know, but it costs a bloody fortune.
Yeah. I would just say, Mark, I think it's more of an event than it is a conference. Yeah. I think it's that sort of style. It felt more of an event. It was personal development involved in it. It was quite eye-opening. So I'd say more an event. The word conference got a bit of a stigma, hasn't it, actually? So.
I know. And we've sort of brainstormed it a couple of times. Well, what can we call it? What can we call it? And we just haven't come up with anything. Maybe we need to give it to a marketing. Well, we've got a marketing guru, haven't we? We've got Kirsty Franks. But no, we haven't come up with anything. But on the back of that, we've launched last year. I'm just trying to think when the first one was. It's October, November. The leadership program. So Clare Yates, who's one of our committee members, and Joe Bourne, who is one of the regional advocates for women in the estate agency. They're both industry trainers, and they are running these leadership training courses around the country. So we've had one in London, we've had one in Newcastle. I think we've got Milton Keynes as well. So trying to sort of spread them around so people can get there. Heavily discounted, thanks to sponsorship from Rightmove. And that the whole idea is to empower women to achieve whatever it is they want to achieve, and women from all backgrounds. Doesn't matter if they're the chief exec or the tea person. Whatever they want to achieve in agency, we want them to empower them to do that. So the leadership training is key, and that will go on all of this year as well.
We did have Ian went last year, as he mentioned before, and he did come back and report back that it had a very different feel to any other conference. And as a group, when you set out, did you always set out with the intention of having a big event like this, or has it just grown legs? And then, if not, was the intention always to make it very different to anything else that goes on in the industry? Because that was the feedback that I had. Stephen Brown runs our mastermind. He came back with some very positive feedback as well. And anyone that went...
He's a big supporter. So it started out, Liana Laporte and myself, we hadn't met because it was lockdown. We were both in EXP, and we just got chatting. We said we wanted a group. Wanted to find a group, a Facebook group that we could join as female estate agents in the UK, and we couldn't find one. So we're chatting about it, and then, well, why don't we do it? We'll just start a group ourselves. And okay, that was fine. And the intention was it would all be online, and we would have maybe workshops and interviews. And we did do interviews back in the early days. You can go back and see them. Do interviews with agents, female agents across the country, talking to them about their a chat like this, really, their story in agency, and what their frustrations were, what their challenges were, if they felt their career was hindered in any way. And they could say no. Anyhow, so that sort of went on for a while, and it grew from literally a couple of hundred to, I don't know, maybe 1,000 or so, and then Liana was talking to Lucy Noonan, and Lucy said, "Oh, wouldn't it be a good idea to have a conference?" And then we just got talking, and then from that, it was all sort of mashed together, that first conference. Hey, thanks very much to Liana. It was really sort of seat of the pants stuff. In the middle of the organising of that, I ended up in hospital in Lanzarote for 2 weeks, having had some major surgery there, and then came back and ended up in hospital here for 3 weeks. And it's just, so I really didn't do much. I sort of just turned up on the day and it was all there. And by that stage, we'd kind of formed an informal committee, and then we just formalised it. And then the rest is history. But yeah, I mean, it's like all the best ideas, really. It often comes from a very simple idea, and it just grows. And I think it demonstrated that there was a need for it.
I was going to ask that actually. How important do you think it's been, kind of with the profile of everything, the whole brand, that it is now? How important do you think it's been for the industry, for raising the awareness, if you like?
I think it's very much that, raising the awareness. And sometimes there are comments in the press that are taken not about women in estate agency, but sometimes there's an article that might be deemed a sexist or misogynistic, popular press, and then you find people jumping on the bandwagon saying, "Oh, it's just banter," or But what we would say was, would it be acceptable for your daughter, your wife, your mother, your auntie to be spoken to or treated in that way? When women are told, "Oh, you've got to man up," or it's no. And Verona, and we must have interviewed her at that really early on when Liana and I were still in lockdown. She talked about dialing up her mail in order to work in a male-dominated. This is before agency, in a male-dominated world. So she dialed up her mail, but I don't think she need to. Now she said she's totally authentic, and I think she does an amazing job now. She's chair of our Women Estate Agents Committee, but she's also chief exec of YOPA, and she does an incredible job. But yeah, I think we're making a difference. Are we still needed? Of course we are, because these things keep happening. And there are women who will be disadvantaged at work still because they're female, because they're a mother, maybe. And you'd like to think it doesn't happen, but it does. The assumption is always that the mother, you've got two parents, but the mother is the one that will deal with the childcare. Well, why is that? Why do we automatically assume? Why is society? I'm not saying but why does society automatically assume that it's a mother that will deal with the childcare? So if the child's sick and he's picking up from school, well, why have you got to go? Can't your wife go? Can't your partner go? So the world is still unfair, I would say.
Do you think, kind of accidentally segueing this into self-employed, but do you think the rise of self-employed agency, and how many different styles of self-employed agency there are now in the UK, and the real kind of expansion and growth of it, do you think that will play a difference with that? So taking it out of the employed office that we were used to as a estate agency, and now bringing it into more of this self-employed model? Because I often now see it, especially with Avocado where we are, it's actually because a lot of the guys are doing the self-employed. It's actually them. If the kid's sick, they'll go and do the pickup. Yeah. They'll do the school run. They'll actually make sure they're at the assembly. It's quite nice to see that sort of stigma, sort of role reversal actually with self-employed.
And it's because as a self-employed agent, as you know, you've got complete control of your own diary, haven't you? So if you do want to take the children to school, that's fine. So you just, sort out your diary so that you can do that. And as the sports days and things. So I do see that a lot. I see it an awful lot. And the men that are doing it, they see it as a privilege because they weren't able to do it before. And actually, it's not just the men see it as a privilege. Sam Sarone, who's a fantastic agent, works incredibly hard. and she was another one that we had on in the early days to interview. And she got 2 children. She launched her own business, and the first day she took her children to school, she cried because she'd never been able to do it before. And she said she got to her business to the stage where she thought, you know what, I might even be able to have another child now, and I've got more control. And she did do that. Molly is, I'm going to say Molly is about 2. She is the cutest baby ever. Sorry, Ian, but she is mega cute. And she could do that because she had control. She had complete autonomy of how she ran her business. She'd even take the baby in the early days onto viewings and valuations. Her customers know that. She is 100% authentic. They know what they're getting when they get Sam's own.
I was just about to say the importance of that is authenticity, right? And being self-confident enough that because you're there with a baby doesn't make you any less of an agent, or because you've got these other things going on in life that doesn't make you any less able to deal with people's house move. But that's got to come from a position of self-confidence. So with the women in estate agency, do you think that helps people realize and become more self-confident so that they can be more authentic? Is that one of the things the results that you've seen out of it?
Well, I think if they see the committee and the wider community in women estate agency putting ourselves out there, showing our vulnerabilities, being authentic, then I think that that just sort of ripples out. And obviously we've still got the Facebook group, which is that is the sort of the beating, that's the heart of the community, and the comments on there, things that people will share. A lot of it, it's kind of, sometimes it's business related, but sometimes it's personal, and very rarely do they get any criticism. And and if there is anything that's deemed to be critical, then it might start a bit of a debate, and then we say, okay, well, that's maybe something we need to look at, something we need to address. Not that particular thread, but but it could be something that we need to talk about in interview, something we need to talk about at conference. But yeah, it's an amazing community and really supportive. So sometimes you might get somebody posting on there just said, "I've had the worst week ever," and they don't even say what, and everybody will be jumping on there. So I'm in your area, John, catch up for a coffee. And I know Ben Madden does his mental health. Is it a podcast now, or is it?
I think he's got a Facebook group, hasn't he, for kind of that topic,
And I hope that offers the same thing for men, because, sometimes, especially for self-employed agents or business owners, it can be a lonely place. So to reach out and say, do you know what, I've had the worst week ever. Don't really want to talk about it, but it'd be nice to just get together or just have that bit of love and support.
Yeah, I think so. I think that parent style, male or female, or anything in between, when you get to the kind of parent aspect of things, and you've got business, young kids, your own personal aspirations, you want to be fit, you want to be healthy, important to still have relationships with your own parents and your own husband or wife. There's a lot of plates to spin and very minimal amount of time. So where you spend your time, it has to be really good quality. And we've used this word quite a lot, but really good, authentic time. There's no point in having a mask over in business, in your relationship, with your own parents, with your kids, with your own fitness. You've got to be raw and honest with what you're trying to achieve out of each period of time, each day, each hour that you spend. Otherwise, we end up wasting it, I think.
Do you think that agents working in a big corporate are perhaps less authentic because they're not allowed to be? They can't be themselves, or they have to be, something that represents the brand, whatever the brand is.
Yeah, I had a coffee with someone recently that I used to work with, and not necessarily corporate agency, but quite a big independent. And I sort of cast my mind back to then. And I think what happens is we get put into job specs, into roles where we're required to do a single thing at volume, because it's how economies of scale can work when you get to the mass level of an organization, if you like. And as a result, we're not able to be creative. We're not able to be authentic because we're working to a job spec. We're not working to our own natural evolution. So I totally agree with you. I think yes, and I think estate agency in particular, and even if you look at hospitality or waiters and waitresses, it's very much now done to the franchise model, to the job spec, to the blueprint, without allowing that sort of creative, authentic personality to breathe. And I think it's the economies of scale. And I think in agency in particular, it's because we're high cost, high turnover, low profit as an industry. And that's why that has to happen sometimes, or all the time, it would seem. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the Model T Ford, isn't it? It's the conveyor belt. So you end up with something that isn't a Rolls Royce, but
yeah,
it still does an a job of sorts, but it's not what you really want.
I saw a graphic actually just before this podcast, and it had 30 years in the private sector, 30 years in the public sector, and just showed the evolution of things like school buses or versus a TV, and the evolution of kind of seeing a TV or a car in the private world, where creativity and independence and ambition is there, versus government funded elements of things where everything just looks identical kind of 30 years later.
Slightly rounder edges, maybe.
Yeah.
Might be getting a bit political here, Ian.
Well, we can talk about Trump if you want later. We'll do that on the next episode.
Oh no.
No, very interesting, Claire. Thank you, Mark. Sorry.
I just want to talk about just finally before we move on more to agency a little bit about the women in estate agency in Sarah Edmondson, because I did see online that there is an event coming in Sarah's memory in the summer, and I really wanted our listeners to know how to find out a little bit more about that as well.
Right. Okay. So they can go to the website, Women in Estate Agency website. It's in June, and I should have the dates off but I can't quite remember. I can't remember the dates in June, but it's, you'd like this, Ian. It's basically, you can walk, you can run. The longest distance is 100k. We're not doing that. We're doing the 50, I think. And it's from it starts in Kendal, and it tracks round to presumably Kentmere and drops down into Ambleside. And then those that are doing the 100k, they kind of do the bottom, the southern loop as well. So you can sign up for that. We've got, I can't remember how many places we've got, but there's still places available. But if you can't actually take part in the event, come along and support us. And if you can't do that, then just sponsor us. So it will all be going into the same pot. So Sarah was from the Lake District. I don't know if people know that. Her mum is joining us for the day as well, which is amazing. And it will be emotional. The conference will be emotional as well, because I think her mum and, she did a podcast with Jeremy, the How Long Have We Got podcast. He's coming to the conference, and he's going to be speaking about Sarah. It's going to be tough to get through that bit, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And 50k is 50k. I know, Ian, it's not that far. I know it is.
It's a long way.
If you look at the elevation, it is a long way.
I was going to say it's 50.
Maybe we're not doing the 50k. Maybe we're doing the 20. We're doing a walk. Actually no, I got that wrong. We're not doing the 50k. I think we're doing the 26. But because of the elevation, it's still it's a full day. That's why it's got to be done in the summer.
I can vouch for that 10k in the Lake District is a tough slog. So,
this is going off on a tangent somewhat, but for my 40th birthday, my husband wanted to know, well, what should we do? And I said, oh, do you know what? There's a run around Coniston on, I think it was the day before my birthday. I said, why don't I go up there? And then the whole family there as well. And so that's what we did. And because I knew it was just a lap of the lake. It's 14 miles around the lake. I thought that can't be difficult because it's going to be sort of lake shore somehow. Of course, you can't run around the shore of the lake, can you? So it's on the roads, and the roads do go up and down, and that it was quite hard. Well, it was harder than I imagined it to be.
Yeah, it's in terms of the trail running world, the Lakeland races, the Lakeland 50 and the Lakeland 100 are two of the most prestige races that you can do, two of the hardest races to get into. So to go and do something like that with such a meaning and purpose in such a beautiful setting, I would imagine it would be warm. You know, the weather can be erratic there, but I imagine it'd be warm, sunny, and hopefully clear skies for the day. And it will be an incredible location.
June tends to be one of the better months. If they're going to get summer, it does tend to be in June. So I assume that's why they're running it.
Yeah,
on that date. Yeah.
Claire, just before we kind of wrap up, because I know we're taking a lot of your time this morning, I'm just intrigued to know for the agents out there. Let me start again. The way that I've seen estate agency in the last 12 or 18 months, and I don't have the statistics, is it feels like there is a lot more women, females, especially younger, coming into estate agency, more so at a rate than I've seen before, especially talking to a lot of the people in my old kind of independent and corporate worlds. It seems like a lot of traditional estate agency officers are now becoming more female dominated, actually, especially around here in the south, which is lovely to see. So what advice would you kind of give to ladies, females, women that are getting into estate agency, that are in the thick of that first kind of 18 months, 2 years? What advice would you give to them kind of with what you've learned over the last couple of years?
So join the Facebook group, of course. Come to any of our events. So obviously the conference, but we also run regional events that are just socials. So the next ones I think are on the 6th of Feb. So with our regional champions that we call them, I think we've got 12 around the country. They will organise events and just turn up. You know, it's not going to cost you anything, and it's not supplier led or anything like that. It's just women getting together and just sharing. Training, get as much training as you can. If you feel that you need more one-to-one support, you've got Agents Together. You can reach out to Agents Together to get a mentor, and they can talk you through, career options if you're new to the business, but also talk through any issues you might have in the environment, the environment that you're working in. Because might find it. You see, you're saying that it's quite female dominated. I don't know. I haven't worked in an office for so many years that I don't really know. That certainly the last office I worked in, it was very male dominated, and which is fine. But I'm not seeing that. Obviously, I deal with agents. I don't know. I couldn't tell you whether there are more female agents in the offices that in the London area, because I don't work in them. So.
Yeah, it's more in the home counties where I am, and maybe dominated is the wrong word, but more dominating than maybe when I started. I started back in 2003, and it was always guys in all of the offices. But actually, it feels like now there is, and I'm not just talking property management or back stuff, on the front office estate agents. It seems like there's lots more in the younger kind of early 20s, lots more girls coming into the industry, which is lovely to see, actually. So
it can be a fantastic career. I mean, I'd like to get to the stage, and I don't think we're there yet. I think perhaps we were once upon a time, but we've moved away from it. That people think of estate agency as a career, not as a job. So coming back to the interviews we did in the early days, women in estate agency, how did you get into estate agency? And I fell into it. It was a part-time job. They were Saturday viewing assistant, or they were going back to work having had children, and somebody said, "Oh, come do 2 days a week," and then they found that they absolutely loved it, because women are really good at talking to people. And coming back to the very first question, what makes a world-class estate agent is it's communication and service, and it's building those relationships. So if they could see it as a career, and be supported in that as well. But I think sometimes there are still women, people, not just women, there are people that go into estate agency because it's just a job. It will see them through for the next few years. The ones that get it will love it. The ones that don't will go on to do something else.
Yeah. You normally know within a couple of months, don't you? You're either addicted to it and you're on holiday looking in foreign estate agents'
windows.
windows to see how much the properties are worth. You don't need to know, but you just find it.
You have to know. No. It's law. It is law. So if you're on holiday in the UK or abroad, you have to look in the estate agent's window. And the children always used to say, "Oh, you're not at work, Mum. You're not at work." It's all right. I'm just looking.
Yeah, it's in the DNA. No, thank you, Claire. It's been very insightful to really get more of a perspective, and it's just continuing to raise that awareness. And I know that the conference, I'll be having 4 tickets that we'll be going to. We're looking forward to it. It's in the diary, and I would advise for other people as well, if you haven't been before, check it out. It's well worth your time, money, energy, and it's well worth supporting as well. So definitely jump on. We'll try and put the link in the show notes to the episode, so that people can find it on the podcast when they're listening to this or watching it on YouTube, and it'll be easier for them to find as well.
Thank you very much for having me.
A massive thank you once again to Clare Hughes from EXP and the Women in Estate Agency team for joining us today. Ian, loads of really interesting insight, and thank you very much for putting me on the spot. It certainly gave me that idea, because I had not thought about going to that conference previously before our chat today. I know we talked about it last year, but actually I'm sat here now thinking I've got a lot to learn.
Yeah, I think it's an event. It's not a conference, it's an event. If I was doing the marketing, I would have it down as an event. Understanding women in estate agency event, I think is more the way that I would define it as, because there's personal development that comes from it. And I shared with my group actually last week that in 2024, I wanted 100 hours of personal development. It was my target for last year. And this would be the way I would look at that, is whatever your kind of target is around growth, learning, education, understanding more about a particular subject, this would be well worth your 7, 8, 9 hours that you could put into your personal development, I would say, and treat it as a reward. You'll purchase the ticket through the business, but treat it as a reward for yourself, and treat it as a reward for whoever you take with you as well, is the way I would look at it.
Yeah, it does sound like an event like no other in the industry, talking about topics that typically people have avoided talking about. I think it's probably fair to say, and that was your feedback last year, right? It was completely different to other conferences that you've been to.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, in a state agency, very different. There's a classic kind of way that you see the estate agency conferences unfold. This felt a little bit more like more events that I've been to outside of a estate agency. A bit more engaging, a bit more fun. And as I shared last year, I felt 90% of it was really positive, and it was really insightful, educational, helpful. There was only a small sliver, 10%, where I felt a bit awkward as a male in the room. I felt it was a bit man bashing, but very small, similar. And it wasn't done with any malice or intent. It's just how I felt in the way that conversation was being had. It made me feel awkward as a man, but that wasn't a bad thing to experience as well. So overall, I thought last year was brilliant. I've looked at the agenda for this year. Looks like there's some fantastic people speaking. I think they tried to make it engaging and fun again this year. Some surprise speakers. The surprise speaker last year was a female beatboxer. She was unbelievable. Like, the whole room after lunch was electric after it. So who knows what surprise people are coming into this one, but just go check it out. Even if you can't make it every year, it's definitely worth something that you go to every other year, I would say, as someone that's a leader in the industry, for sure.
Yeah, loads of learning opportunities. And also, we talked about the women in estate agency massively. The topic of conversation of agency wasn't in depth, really. We got probably focused on the conference in particular, but they talked about Claire talked about the hospitality and service being so important for a agency, and it's something that we talk about very, very, very regularly. But she talked about taking the time to step back from the business and actually have a look and assess how can you improve the hospitality that you're giving to your clients, or the experiences, as you said. Is that something that you've done within your business in this sort of quieter period, December, January?
Yeah, I posted this week on LinkedIn my Tuesday tip actually, and it was about stop talking to houses. And I think that's the thing, you know, houses don't have ears, they don't make the decisions, yet a lot in agency we communicate to houses. We talk, I need this house, or I just sold this property and I need another one. We never spend too much time building the story and talking to the person. And I think that's more the marketing element of things, but the same relates to the transaction, to the negotiating. You're negotiating with a person and another person. Yes, the product in the middle is a house, but we're negotiating with two people when we're in the middle of the negotiations. But a lot of the dominance seems to come around the house and the comparables and this, that, and the other. Just remember it's about people, because that's where the experience comes from. And I think in hospitality, they understand that when you go to a restaurant, you're going to a restaurant for the experience, not necessarily just for the food. It's not just to go and have nice food. You're going for the whole experience. And that's why you pay so much more for what you could create at home for a fifth of the price, effectively, maybe less, maybe 10% of the price. So it's just remembering that, is that people are trying to buy a home or sell a home, but they're coming to you for the experience. That's why they're using us. Otherwise, they just slap a board up themselves and try and do it. They're coming for our expertise and experience. I think it's a really good topical point. And hospitality, is one of the industries which they get that.
Yeah. And we could certainly learn from that, as Claire explained. So stop talking to houses. That's one of the things I'm going to be taking away from that. I like that, because how many times do we post on social media, sold this house, or, you know, and it's always the address, the road name, not Mr. and Mrs. Smith, or very rarely are we telling the tales of the people behind the properties here. Really, really good advice. And once again, a massive thank you to Claire for joining us today. We will drop any links to any of the events that we talked about today into the podcast description. As you know, we do this because we love our industry. We want to see it improve and get better. If you have enjoyed today's episode, please share it out on social media, reach out, share it with colleagues. I'm Mark Worrell. He's Ian Macbeth. Thank you very much for listening. We'll see you again next week.